I know I'm late with the milk, but I actually have two valid reasons this time. I am a bit under the weather again, which I swear to God, every time I gain a little bit of momentum, it just immediately, bam, sickness. You gotta love it. And the other thing is it released on other websites, but I heard that the translations were pretty poor, and it wasn't the original people that typically handle all of that. So I know my YouTube brain should have been like, oh, cover it immediately, the views. But I just felt like it wouldn't have been right on my behalf, especially for those of you that watch me consistently for this sort of thing. So we'll just get into it. Chapter 375, a continuation of Guts being in despair after completely failing to touch Griffith in any way or fashion. We, up to this point, have gotten a little bit of a peek into the mind of Casca and where she's going to have her struggle and everything going on with that. And last time we left off in the previous chapter, the Kushans invaded the boat. The big aspect of discussion, jumping off of the last chapter, given the imagery, was Guts in chains and all that tying into the Beast of Darkness. But here we get to see the chapter open up with Salat having a conversation with General Daiba. And this is one of those things where it's another wild card being thrown into the story to see a character like Daiba and what sort of role he can play in sort of the grand scheme of everything. But seeing Salat back into the story in this type of fashion is really neat. And to see all of the pieces that will kind of unite or have to unite against Griffith start to come together, as for people like me and Ryan have kind of been discussing over the last years, is really neat. But we see Salat have this conversation with General Daiba and kind of going on about what could currently be happening, especially since the boat that Guts and his crew is on, it's no tiny little boat. We're talking like an actual warship on enemy territory waters. And so it's not a good look for them, so it makes sense that the boat is being apprehended. And the fact that they were able to get a hold of the Black Swordsman is a whole other thing that they're going to have to deal with. But the real powerful part in the entire chapter is the interaction we get with Isidro and Guts. And I think it really drives home the point that I've kind of been getting at this entire time with the importance of having Guts like this for a little bit in this completely defeated state. And it's a really interesting parallel to when Isidro and Guts first met and he was attacked by Kushans, and we saw the way that went and the state in which Guts was at. And time again, Isidro has witnessed Guts do things out of the pure will of his own being. And it's almost like if you had your own role model, your idol, say in whatever aspect and fashion, and you see this individual that you look up to that gives you hope and inspires you, and you see them at their lowest point. For you, it's a little bit difficult to grasp all of that, especially for a character like Isidro, who isn't the most mature character out of the entire group. And this is something that allows it all to really sink in more and more and more. And I liked how the last chapter kind of integrated elements of imagery with the Beast of Darkness. And it's this thing where narratively at the beginning of the story, when we're introduced to Guts and later on in the Conviction arc, we get to really see the Beast of Darkness and its driving force in the way that Guts is being driven by hatred, being driven by all of these negative emotions. We associate Guts with the existential character that we do in the Golden Age, somebody who's wondering what their purpose is. But the other aspect of Guts that we largely associate with him is this pure wrath, anger, this nonstop never say die attitude. And so I think this imagery of Guts wrapped in chains like this, like the Beast of Darkness usually is presented as, is a very strong piece of imagery, because we get to see the different phases now of Guts. And I really hope he kind of stays like this for a little bit more, so we could really get an in-depth look, and even more so from Guts' perspective as it continues onwards about how he feels about all of this and how he tries to rationalize this. Because we had a good sector of the story where we see Guts give into his Beast of Darkness, to let it all out, to just absolutely be unrestrained into the world. And then now we see this phase of him ever since he's shifted his purpose into trying to suppress it. But yet I think he's going to have to realize that that's not the answer either. And so I think this final section of the story is going to be an effort for Guts to integrate said Beast of Darkness. And I think the Berserker armor will play an aspect in that, given chapters ago that, the blacksmith pretty much told him, like, you haven't tapped into the full potential of this thing. And I think that'll be a really nice sort of culmination of Guts' character arc, the absolute outlash of it, the suppression, and then finally the integration of this darker side of him that is really been a thorn in his side throughout the entire story, just as much as Griffith has been. And overall, and I don't say this in any negative fashion, by the way, just to get out of the way, love the direction with the artwork. This chapter felt like more of a step sideways than forward completely. Because a lot of the other chapters we've gotten have been like these massive jumps forward into seeing where the story's going to go. Not to say that this one didn't move the story forward in any way or sense, but I think a lot of the sentiments regarding the important stuff with Guts, with things that we knew were going to be happening, just started to be a little more confirmed. And so it's just moving in this direction in which I think a lot of us were predicting, which is perfectly fine. Although, if there was one thing that I think a lot of us definitely would have wanted to see is some sort of interaction between Puck and Rickard, or especially Rickard and Guts. But given the circumstance and the context of what's going on, it makes sense that this wouldn't be the most appropriate moment given the tension, given all of the other Kushans being there. I think it's going to have to be a far more relaxed scenario, one where they get a breather and sort of, the air could be cleared regarding the intentions of Guts and his group and them realizing that they both have a common enemy. But I think it was just really strange because Puck is a character who's always been rather expressive, whether it was at the very beginning of the story when we're introduced to him and he serves as this voice of reason, and then we get him in the conviction arc later on to, him serve more of a, as he did early still, an aspect of comedy relief in the very dark story that Berserk is. He's still a far more expressive character, and then to see this panel of him zoomed into his face where he's just standing there cross-armed, kind of expressionless looking at Guts, and there's no dialogue, there's no anything, and it sort of leaves a lot of questions as to what Puck is thinking about all of this, and future questions as to what is going to happen with Puck's character from here on outward. Like, will there be any sort of interactions? Because it's just really odd to see Puck have seemingly no input seeing Guts like this, and then Rickard shows up and he takes off his coverings and all that, and again, nothing from Puck's end. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see if anything with that is sort of, dealt with as with these upcoming chapters, and to see Rickard's reaction to Guts is definitely one of concern. That expression is in the clear. And then there is an interaction between Rickard and Roderick, explaining that he's a Midland person, and that he's surprised to see someone who can speak his language. However, you're in Kushan water, so we have to apprehend you for now, and from here on outwards we're going to see how the story continues. Although later on in the final pages we see Puck sitting on top of Guts, and once again there's just no expression, no nothing, no, he's just kind of there. And so, yeah, that goes back to what I was just discussing earlier. But just like every Berserk chapter we've gotten recently, it confirms somewhat where the direction of the story is going to be going and our speculations, while leaving the door open to a lot of questions regarding what this or that character will do. But the artwork, again, was really, really fantastic, and I love the shot in that final page. They've done a great job with it. So, as always, we wait until the next one. This has been The Masked Man. Hope everyone has a blessed rest of the day, and peace.